to another Hot Topics. Today we are going to be visiting with DriveThru Branding's co-founders Susan Solomon and Christina Papalle. DriveThru Branding is a boutique marketing agency that is located in New York City, and the two co-founders bring very unique but deep experience to the marketing industry. Susan's background is in music, film production, digital media. Christina's been building brands for companies like Pepsi, Gillette, Nickelodeon, Pepperidge Farm, AccuView, Victoria's Secret, and Intel. And she's also been published as an expert on marketing for publications like Fast Company, Advertising Age, and Marketing Daily. Let's join Christina and Susan now for today's hot topic.
Yes, just talk a little bit about when it started, what inspired you to get into this space, some of the interesting work that you've done. I know you guys have done the Highline branding, and that has gotten some massive national attention, but I'd love to know a little bit more about some of the other work that you've done too.
Great. So DriveThru Branding is in thought and theory 2 years old. But we launched last year as a branding agency with branding services for startups and small businesses. So folks that don't have a lot of time, don't have a lot of money, but who would like to be and act just like the big players in terms of brand. We've actually been working with an array of different categories and different clients. Our clients are with us for 2 weeks only. So they purchase a product and that product is complete within that 2-week window. And then we offer services that are more consultancy-like services that are fairly traditional. But our clients, again, across an array, the Highline is one. The Highline really worked with us to establish more consistency in their tone, particularly their tone of voice. And we set up a brand guide that would help them with tone, with some traits in their tone of voice that were really for writers. So writers could write in a tone of voice. And today, the media that we all use most, of course, is very writer-focused. It's social, it's web. It's stuff where even us as non-writers are writing all the time. So our brand work is really focused on helping guide folks and making sure their tone is consistent. Other clients that we've worked with are really small businesses in the beauty space, a brand called Amika. We've worked with a brand called Photo Shelter, which is really a service that allows professional photographers to basically run their businesses through the platform. And then a couple of other key players that we're working with have really started to enter the nonprofit space. So a group called Give Lively, and they have some beautiful products that are really about gift giving through what we'd consider more traditional means online, allowing folks to donate to a nonprofit instead of gift giving. So really cool stuff.
Very, very cool. When you talk about tone, that's an interesting word. It's very different than branding or look or feel. What do you mean by tone?
So usually tone sits in the verbal realm. So in the world of brand, we really divide it into visual and verbal, and all of that is experiential. So if we think about tone, often you hear that referred to as voice, and in some cases you might feel it or hear it referred to as verbal identities, but ultimately tone is really how you speak and how you write. Interesting about words is that on a page, text comes through with a voice, and that is very similar to what you might think about reading literature with prose. Prose has a very interesting voice to it depending on the author. Well, brands are authoring their work, and when we write words, it's coming from a particular place. It'll be interesting in the workshop because we talk about, well, where do we get tone and how do I know what my tone is? And we're going to set everyone up with some easy exercises to figure out a little bit about their tone.
Excellent. Okay. Okay, so the other thing I'd like to go through very, very quickly is just really quick stories about bios of the two of you. How did you meet? How did you end up working together? How long have you worked together? Just that little bit of,
absolutely. Yeah. Susan and I, who's actually hiding in the back in this very room, 20 years ago.
Hello. Hi.
We met in an office working. So we both started working for a company that was primarily doing branding and the promotional package material, so all of the commercial work for cable companies, a company that launched MSNBC, launched XM satellite radio. And Susan and I started working together really in production, and we were creatives and producers together on that side of the business. So that's a long time ago. But immediately we were working, and friendship obviously blossomed. We're very good friends, we're best friends, but we're also folks that started our relationship working together. So that work piece was always figured out. It's interesting when you do start businesses with friends and you always think, oh gosh, is that going to be the end of our friendship? Well, ours was built on that. So it turned out to be a great partnership, and we've launched several businesses together. This is probably the one where we decided 2 years ago to commit, to basically say this is going to happen no matter what. We are going to do everything we can. We're going to find every moment we can to work together. And we all know it's hard, especially if you're starting a business while you're doing something else, while you could be in another job. You might be at home and have tons of family responsibilities. We all find time, but it's the commitment and the schedules that have made us really successful. And together, you know, Lisa, we know you from We Festival as well. You know, Susan has a gig. I have other gigs too. So this is our primary piece, but we know that we're juggling lots of stuff. And we also, I think that's how our partnership works as well.
Yeah. Okay. Let's go ahead and start on the workshop, and folks who join a little bit later as they figure out how to get on can go ahead and go backwards if they need to.
Wonderful. So here today, we're just going to walk through a very quick sort of presentation typed before we get to some of the nitty gritty on helping us exercise how to be brands. So the title is Brand Matters, and as a branding agency, we believe that brand does matter. I've been working in brand for 20 years as well. I'm a brand strategist by trade. My specialty is both brand positioning, brand story, and what I consider, or the world of brand considers, visual branding. But we actually discovered and came upon our business, Susan and I, when we realized Susan was working for a startup and she was trying to execute so much content. And we said, you know, what's missing here is some brand foundation. So our business was born. We'll walk you through what it means for small businesses, big or small, startups, or even just small businesses that are through traditional channels, should really think about brand first. We start talking about what we think about as the new normal. So we're all here with small businesses for a reason. Our culture has shifted. And we don't have the stats, but by 2025, we're going to see, in some cases, a 400% increase of the number of small businesses that are in this country. What happens in a small business is, regardless of what that business is or what category it is, whether it's to real consumers that buy stuff or to business or B2B consumers that buy stuff, small businesses actually need to create a lot of marketing content across a ton of channels and every single day. If you're in the realm of social, you are creating content on a daily basis. A tweet is a piece of marketing content. A Facebook page, you are establishing our marketing content. We all actually are marketing ourselves even in our Facebook channels. So because businesses are creating so much content, we really believe that all marketing starts with brand. And we'll talk a little bit about what brand is, but we do want to just describe that when people hear the word brand, it is confusing. And I've been in this industry for 25 years, and I still work with clients at giant CPG companies, so the Procter & Gamble's of the world, or the Gillette's of the world within that, who say, you know, sometimes even marketers who've had a long tenure with brand want to think of brand differently. But brand is actually everything. Brand, it's more than the logo, although that's communicating your brand. It's more than a name, although that is communicating your brand. It's really a singular idea that has a unified look, tone, and feel. There's that word tone again, to guide all content creative. The idea itself has many different forms. And when we think about it for our businesses or for businesses that are just starting up, we've developed at DriveThru products that work just to get an idea on paper and give some guidance to how it looks and how it sounds. But ideas have many different forms. And many different companies use all kinds of tools to help communicate that idea to people creating content. But if you're of the mind that all marketing starts with brand, which obviously we are, but I don't know that you get any doubt in that in the marketing field, the conversation doubts that we get from small businesses a lot is just, you know, we're not a brand, we're just trying to get our business off the ground. And we bring that up because when you think about getting your business off the ground, you're immediately starting to market. As soon as you have a name, you've started marketing. And that singular piece of you sometimes comes on a whim, or it's a name folks like, or maybe it's very focused on a product itself. We really believe that when we open up the idea of what could be driving that creative, even the name of your company really needs to be something bigger than just those small things like a product. And we say that because we believe that every business is probably going to grow. Well, we can do our example, actually. So we talk about drive-thru a lot. When we started our business, we actually began calling ourselves Brand Start. And Brand Start seemed to make a lot of sense. It said who we were to people, and it made a bit of clarity for the product that we were developing. However, as we went to not only trademark that, and then also to understand how it would grow, we realized it was a little too finite. It was, first of all, focused on starting a brand versus helping businesses who already have a brand. So it immediately didn't make sense for us, and we scrapped it. We did our own brand guide, and then we used our brand guide to create our name, which is DriveThru. So it was, even as branders, as we said, sometimes even branders get caught up on getting marketing out the door. So the one thing that you can remember from just this conversation is that every business is a brand, because every business is marketing. So what do you mean by brand? Well, we just try to describe it as simply as possible. And brands are actually a lot like people. So they have personalities that communicate who you are to the world and who they are to the world. And we think about persona in human beings. If you open doors for people and are very pleasant, you're probably a generous person. I might call you generous, and that's a personality trait of yours. All brands, all people have personas. Here's just a slide. It helps us to understand what we mean by that. These are famous characters, famous female characters. Princess Leia, let's talk about Princess Leia for a second. If we wanted to describe her, we might to think about her rebellious and queenly. She's even a little bit sardonic and sarcastic, strong. She's many personality traits that we start to think about as, again, that human trait. On the total opposite spectrum, we might see someone, a character like Erin Bogdanovich, who is very thoughtful, is extremely approachable, is a regular gal, but is also strong-willed. When we think about Amy Schumer's character in, what is it called again? Trainwreck. Susan's always like, Trainwreck. She's smart, she's funny, she's a little bit sloppy. She has a sense of humor always, and she's self-aware. And these are traits, again, as human beings that we want to think about. So how do we do this for ourselves, or how do we do it for brand? Many of us have businesses that are very much tied to our own persona. And that's okay, but your brand is not going to be you. When brands are self, it's challenging. Think about Martha Stewart and the problems that her brand has gone through once she went to jail. But we do feel a brand's personality through the content they create. So we wanted to show you some examples of putting some brands together so that we can start to see personality around us. And that way we can even use other brands in the universe and what they feel like, what they look like, and what they sound like to help us guide our own brands. We love to use brand analogs whenever we talk about branding because it helps people see it and feel it in real time. I can talk brand theoretically till the cows come home, but ultimately, unless we're using real brands, it's hard to really understand. So we're going to walk through a couple of things from Target and Coke, and we use brands that everyone knows and that have been around for a while so that everyone has a vision already of what those brands feel like and look like. And has probably, most likely anyway, in this crew, a relationship with these brands at some point in their lives. So we're going to walk through one at a time and just really take apart what we mean by personality and then how that personality translates to how they look and their tone of voice and how they sound. Let's start with Coca-Cola. So here's some recent imagery from Coke. Coke has been around for 150 years. Not all of us have the joy of that tenure. But what happens with Coke still is the same thing that happened 120 years ago, is that Coke has always been a brand completely devoted to optimism. Open happiness is their current tagline, but if you remember, a way that some of you might remember way back in the 70s, I'd like to teach the world to sing. You know, there was a brand that was completely and utterly devoted to togetherness and happiness in a very optimistic way. So they've always been very optimistic. They're also incredibly charismatic. They have lots of color and vibrancy. And when we think about Coca-Cola, sometimes we think about things like an openness or a friendliness. Coke is for everyone. You know, the business itself has been through ups and downs over the years, and we all will be. However, that need to be open and honest and fairly friendly has never gone away. When we look at that personality through the language that they use, we start to see some of the ways that they're translating it into actual words. So from a word standpoint, Coca-Cola is very wide-eyed. We sometimes call them a brand that is like an innocent, like a child almost. They love to point out the positive. Good things come in fours, or solve your thirst. You know, we have an answer. They're also extremely confident, and that is a direct translation of being charismatic. They work with what we call crisp consonant phrases. When we think about crispness, we think about short phrases, the global brand that needs to translate a lot of their work into multiple cultures. And when you're a multiple culture brand, you learn very quickly that you're going to use efficiencies in language that can be translated easily. So something like solve your thirst or good things come in fours, I imagine that's pretty translatable across any culture. And then we have something that we want to say about friendliness in terms of language. It's colloquial speech. Colloquial speech is speech that people use when they actually talk. So whether it's an adage, an old adage like good things come in fours or solve your thirst, or choose happiness, or open happiness. You can see that it's very friendly, it's something understood, and it's sometimes in language that people use when they speak. So words say a lot about our brands. And this is when we talked earlier about the idea that folks are pretty much writing for their businesses all the time. Think of how many emails you send on your business every day. It's very challenging to write consistently in a particular tone of voice, especially when we're not trained writers. You know, Susan and I actually struggle with this in our brand too. We are constantly referring to our brand guide. What is our tone again? What can I just look at what I just wrote and just make sure that it feels like it's our tonality? It's hard, but once you exercise the muscle over and over and over, it gets a lot easier. And it sometimes feels like, you know, 7th grade grammar class, to be honest. We didn't remember that there was language like colloquialness, or what it means to have a phrase that's full of consonants. Oh yes, consonant, that's not a verb. Okay, I get it. It's really creates crisp sound when you use things like P's and G's and D's. So again, not expecting everyone in the universe to grasp like we didn't, for sure. But when you have that guidance and you have real writers working for you, we often recommend that folks actually use writers. It's great guidance to have. Images, on the other hand, we don't really go around designing our own stuff unless we're trained a little bit. You know, Susan and I do a bit of the design of our branding communications, meaning any imagery we're using in a particular email blast or tweet or something, or sometimes even the work that we're sharing online. We do try to, though, look to our directions again, always referring to our brand guide. Coca-Cola's imagery, especially here in the stuff you can see, pretty dynamic. They have movement, and we've described their optimism as coming through in kinetic movement, and patterning. So by having lots of robust vertical or horizontal movement, they're showing that they are excited. And that is also, you can feel the colors smiling in a very optimistic way. Their charisma is popping through in imagery, but also in color. Color is very saturated, which means it has a weight. In the world of design, saturation is about weight. It's not pastel. Think the opposite of pastel. And saturated color often has jewel tone colors, so very bright, with a very focused pop. So you see the stripes on the towel of the advertising, or even the color on the top left that has what we call a negative space Coke bottle. They're allowing color to have the standout, even if it's a white color. And then we look at something around imagery. The openness is really about curvature. It's round, it's organic shapes. Think of the iconic shape of the bottle. You know, again, this is 100, 120 years old. They've never changed it, and they've used that shape to influence other things that they do. If you think about the way on the image, the second one from the top row, so it's just the Coca-Cola splash. Even the way they're integrating that graphic splash feels very curved and organic. So here we're just noting personality is how you look too. And when you think about this all together, there are stories that are being told through this persona. We want to hang out with this brand. This brand makes us feel better. This brand is something that we feel when, if we're not feeling well, it's goodness to cheer us up, or if we are feeling well, it's validating our feelings. And brands, above all, are extensions of our feelings. We're going to go through one more, and then we're going to talk about your businesses. So Target. Target is one of my personal favorite brands. It's also one of my personal favorite places. I could be lost in Target for hours. My children are very wary to go to Target with me. It's a dangerous place. So personality for Target, we have wide-eyed here as well, some charisma. They're very friendly and optimistic too. Some of the things that we talk about with Target are playful though, very playful. Target tends to be a brand that also brings in a lot of style. And those aren't words on the page, but see, we can even riff about what Target is without thinking too much about it because we're pretty close to it. The confident, crisp phrases, and oh, this looks like it's a joyful, gleeful phrasing is another verbal thing on Target. I'm going to go with charismatic. Let's go all the way to the edge of that. High contrast glossiness. So they have a sheen and a shine at Target. And this is, again, all of the content, big advertising. We understand we're not all going to run out and have budgets for any kind of large advertising. But Target even looks this way in the small advertising they do in their social feed, or if you check out their Instagram. They're open and round and friendly as well, and they also use bright saturated colors, very close to Coca-Cola. So you can see that the two brands together are creating some similarity. They also use red, both, which is a power color, but it's also the color of lots of other things in our culture. In the Chinese culture, it's actually the color, it's a marriage color, so it's total optimism. The Target brand. Now let's think about branding our brands. And many of you may have thought of it already, but when we're talking about it, we are, again, in the personality realm. And we want to use other brands that kind of feel like us. How we know they feel like us? Well, we can talk through that. So one, this is an analog exercise. And analog exercises mean you get stimulus from things around you that are almost metaphoric stand-ins for who you are. So we're going to start on the first step. What we would do is gather brands you think feel like you. And you think about brands, you have to start to see them as personas and personalities. Are you curious like Google? Who would ask a lot of questions? Well, that's a person that's curious. And Google is all about questions. Or rebellious like the Virgin brand. I don't know if anyone is familiar with Virgin Atlantic or Virgin America. Very, very silly in a rebellious way. And the point is to land a number 2 on 3 to 4 personality traits that feel right for your brand. So once we've gathered brands for ourselves, we can start to think about what part of those brands feel like us. And not every brand is going to be perfectly holistically just like you, but you're going to borrow a trait, 1 or 2, that makes sense. And we say 3 to 4 is really the limit because it's hard to manage more than that. Managing more than 3 or 4 personality traits makes it very difficult to really know who you are as a person. And if you had to describe your friends, you'd probably land on 2, 3, or 4 and call it a day. But thinking about who your company is when you think about those traits and what your product or service means and how it actually helps others. That can be ways to get into persona or even into the analogs that you would choose. If we are thinking about ourselves and our brand, so our own personality traits, that is also a great way to think about using some other brands that represent the you of you, and then seeing if you can find some traits in those brands that you can apply to your brand. It's a little transitive property action there. So personality is the start of everything. I'm not expecting, and I don't think DriveThru expects that every human being can then deconstruct a writing style or some kind of image direction. But it could get you going at least to think about how you look at your own writing or look at the work that you're creating that's marketing content and really realize whether or not it actually makes sense with your persona. I'm going to head back for 1 second to something like Target. If Target suddenly had a tweet that felt like it was yelling at you, would you think that was Target? You wouldn't. You'd know it was off. But you could look to the personality traits and say it's off because it's the opposite of friendly. It's offensive. Or if you thought about a brand, let's think about a more rebellious brand like Virgin, who is definitely with a wink and a smile creating content that feels, again, a little off center. You would expect it if they came across as super friendly, or even connecting like what we call a brand like a friend, it wouldn't really feel like Virgin. One other thing we mentioned. So here is a template for something we call a creative brief. When you have a persona and you're executing a personality in your marketing content, we feel the thing that every company needs to do before they execute is fill out a creative brief. It gets you thinking about how your personality is going to translate, but it also gets you thinking about what the message is and what you're creating. This is a template that we'll be happy to make available to everyone who wants to see this. Especially, here's a form you can use it in. It just is prompts that help you express yourself a little bit more clearly, particularly if you're having other folks do your content, if you're having writers or designers or even someone internally create a piece of content. This helps you get your ducks in a row about who you are, what you want to communicate in the goal of the communication, who it's for, some target audience questions, where folks will see it, what the key singular message of the communication is or the piece of content, and then some of the hows and how it should look, feel, and sound. If all you've got is personality, it's a great thing to put in that how. It needs to sound friendly. It needs to sound optimistic. It needs to sound creative. It needs to sound provocative. It needs to sound revolutionary. Whatever the personality traits of your company are, that it would go right in that how. And we show this because folks are like, okay, I know what my personality is. Well, how do I use it? How does it get influence, or how does it actually influence the stuff I'm creating? Well, through this template, it can be built into literally directions, creative direction for you, for your resources, for your writers, for your designers, for anyone that's executing content.
And thank you so much.
Thanks, guys. It was nice to meet you guys. Bye.
Okay, bye.